The story of SABC News began 75 years ago with that very first radio news service on Springbok Radio on the 17th of July 1950. Since then, the public broadcaster has transformed to become the voice of South Africans by telling their stories. SABC's mission is to do and be high-performing, financially sustainable, to be digitised national broadcaster that provides compelling, informative, educational and entertaining content via all of our platforms. Well, to mark this milestone as SABC News, we've invited into studio to talk to us is the SABC Board Chairperson, Khathutshelo Ramukumba. What a pleasure to have you. Thanks for visiting us here this morning.
No, I'm happy to be here to join in the celebrations.
And what a celebration it is. You know,
what it was.
When we look back and we know that we have been through very tumultuous times. I mean, we're going through a tough time at the moment, whether we talk financially or whatever the case may be. But this is a rock, and it's a rock that has been here and will continue to be here in one form or other. For you, what is it that SABC News means to you personally?
Look, if you take it from what the SABC's mandate is, which is to inform, educate and entertain the nation, and you then zoom into the news aspect of it, is that we have a responsibility to make sure that every single South African, despite the location of where they are, their status in life, they are informed and they're kept up to breast with the developments that are happening in the country. So that is a significant obligation that we have, and we dare not fail the people of South Africa. So that is why all effort is put in making sure that even with limited resources, we are able to provide South African with that important information and education, also to build the nation, but importantly to also defend and mature our young democracy.
One of the most fascinating things I've done this morning is going to a place I've never been before, and that is to the archives, into the deep archives, because that is the heart of the SABC. We hold stories and memories that no other institution holds. In fact, we have institutions that lean on us for those archives, whether they be locally or internationally. How important is that in the greater scheme of everything we do here at the SABC?
Look, the history, where we come from, is important. We need to know where we're coming from to understand where we should be moving towards as a country, as a nation. And as you have correctly articulated it, we have the repository of the material that nobody has in this country. So for us, that is why we're committed to the digitization project, where we should be able to preserve that archives that we have, digitize it so that we can preserve it for future generations to come, so that we are able to educate them of the journey we've traveled as a country, so that we're able to build on that and become a better nation.
You know, one of the things, of course, that is so important to South Africans, and it's the issue of trust. And the SABC, having its ups, having its downs, going through whatever it does go through, I imagine as a board, because I know that that's how we feel inside this working environment as SABC News. The most important thing for us is journalistic integrity, independence, and no interference. How important is that at a board level, that you as a board, distance yourself from trying to interfere at all with the workings of news at the SABC?
No, that is very important for us, because for anybody out there to be able to trust and believe in whatever comes out of our newsroom, whether it's through a news bulletin or through a current affairs program, they need to trust that that product is produced independently. It's not influenced by anyone. And for us, we adhere to the SABC charter and the editorial policies of the SABC. But also, as a board, we come in here with the benefit of hindsight, because we know where the SABC have been. If we speak about the period that Public Protector Thuli Madonsela defined in that report as when governance and ethics fail, we know where we come from. And I was very happy sometime last year to read that the SABC News is the most trusted brand in the country, which means that South Africans are saying, if it's not an SABC News, it's probably not true. So we have to protect that. And one of the ways to do that is to make sure that we protect and defend the editorial independence of the newsroom.
I know it's a party, I know it's a celebration, and I know I've got a link to an ad break. That's important. However, I cannot let you go without asking where the board is at in terms of looking at public funding as an alternative way of improving the public broadcaster. Where are we at?
Look, we're having many parallel conversations around that. And, just yesterday we were at the joint committee of the Portfolio Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies and the Appropriations Committee making this particular case. Because our message to the shareholder and everybody else who cares to listen is that the SABC is too big to fail. And the SABC is too important to South Africans to fail. And we think that we're making progress. We think that, the powers that be are beginning to have an appreciation of the case that we're putting forward, and we're confident of the future that lies ahead.
I hope so. Thanks so much for talking to us and for visiting us this morning and joining in the celebration. Khathutshelo Ramukumba, who is the SABC Board Chairperson, joining us to reminisce, to talk about SABC News, 75 years.